So we tried this video before, didn't we? But it was so miserable.
I did a massive rambling description of my honeymoon in Guatemala.
Which you're going to tell us about in a minute, aren't you? But can you?
If I can.
Can you do a quick? I'm sure you can do a sort of live.
A condensed.
Yeah, that's not so depressing.
Well, last week I was fairly fresh off it, and it felt like a massive adventure. But in relaying it to you, Kev, I realised it's actually
you were reliving it.
I was reliving it, but it wasn't that interesting for other people. It's sort of like a lot of things happened, and then this happened, and then this happened.
I didn't realise that it was quite so. I mean, you had to go in you were stuck in Guatemala, weren't you? You were on holiday in Guatemala.
So, okay, I was on honeymoon in Guatemala. I've got to say that because Sarah was sort of like...
You didn't even mention...
Yeah. Whenever we write an email to someone begging for some money back, she's always like, make sure you tell them it's our honeymoon, Sam.
Yeah. So if you want to go on our Patreon, that was Sam's honeymoon. He's not no money.
Yeah. It was supposed to be the holiday of a lifetime. So we were looking at Colombia because I fancied some drugs.
Good time.
And then thought, maybe it's a bit too dangerous. So we talked.
No, is it really dangerous going to Colombia?
If you go on a package tour, it's not dangerous. They asked, we went into travelling and they asked us, what do we want to do? And I don't really know, really. I want a bit of culture, I want a bit of nature. And Sarah was like, yeah, and I want some beach.
Was the beach in Guatemala?
Wow. We were going to Guatemala for half the holiday and the other half, where all the nice hotels, we booked into nice hotels, was in Belize.
Oh, of course.
Belize is on the Caribbean coast. So the main thing I was worried about going, it's weird, when we left, coronavirus was sort of kicking off on the news, but it was sort of like still in the stage of it's
the news.
It's the news, they got nothing to report, so they're just dwelling on this. It never entered our head we were going to a relatively low incidence area. The main thing that was worrying me was American immigration officials.
Yeah.
We'd heard all sorts of stories that they can be right gits.
Yeah.
And they don't they got no sense of humour and stuff like that. And it wasn't as bad as all that. I mean, we got there and I knew the guy was... did he ask us if we'd had any symptoms? I can't remember. Maybe he did. I don't know. I can't remember. But I mean, it got to one point, they take your fingerprints. You got an Esther. They take your passport. I mean, they've got everything, They want your bank details. They want to know how much cash you're carrying and stuff like that. And they want to know the purpose for your visit. And basically, they want to hear the word holiday. If you don't give them the word holiday, then, we landed in Miami. No. Yeah, so we're going from Miami to Guatemala. We're not that far from Guantanamo Bay.
So they'll put you in it. If you say vacation, they'll put you in it.
Right. So with that, Sarah says it's something along the honeymoon route, yeah. And he says, so what are you here? And it's like, it felt like we've got 15 seconds to say the word holiday, otherwise we're being carted off. Sort of
Is it really hard suddenly to go?
Holiday, we're going on holiday. He's right, okay. Put your fingers in there. All right, okay. Great. Sarah did something really embarrassing at Heathrow, by the way. She said, shall I ask if we can get any free upgrades because it's our honeymoon? I'm like, you can't do that, Sarah. That's a thing they do in films. They don't do that in real life. And she's like, you don't mind if I ask you? We've got to try. It's our honeymoon. I said, look, I'll go stand over here.
You go over there. I'll be there.
You go now. And she bloody did. And the woman, I was actually quite nice about it. She said, look, they don't even show us how to do it. I can give you the prices for upgrades and stuff like that. We decided, nah, it's not worth it. It's not worth the extra cash. We'd already spent a bucket load. Anyway. So apart from that, we got to Guatemala in pretty normal circumstances. Actually, I'll tell you what else at Miami. We got here early. We got a couple of hours before the flight. Let's go and get breakfast or lunch or have a drink, whatever. At Miami, there was none of that.
In Miami?
We got through it. Yeah, there was like little shops, but they were tiny. And we'd been on the plane for 10 hours, and I don't think we hadn't had a second meal, so we were looking for another meal. There wasn't a meal on the Guatemala flight, so we're looking for somewhere to eat. And basically, we found one place by our gate which sold pizza. So we decided to have a pizza, and flip me, this thing could have fed a battalion. It was massive. It was like, honestly, it was enormous. You know, we had 2 tables back to each, and you needed both tables. Yeah, you couldn't open the box on the 2 tables. It was flipping enormous. And I like a thick crust pizza, which I think is like sacrilege to some people, but it came about that thick. You know, there's probably a bag of flour in that bread. You know, it's sort of like probably more than that. It was enormous. Anyway, so we get on our flight to Guatemala, absolutely stuffed, because once you bought it, you got to eat it. You know, but we got the first whiff of coronavirus really that anything was really going on internationally was at Guatemala airport. As we were coming out, they stuck a thermometer in our face and took our temperature. And then obviously we passed and went straight through, and we thought, okay, well, they're taking it seriously. That's great. It's weird how, you know, because they've got next to no cases there, compared to us anyway. And then we had a day of leisure. I think the first day, so we had a tour of Antigua, and we went to the Casa del Ron, which is like a rum tasting session, which was ridiculous. You just went in there and had a bit of rum. Yeah, so we go. It's like an official thing. We go on a rum tasting, tour. So we think, okay, this is great. The tour guide in the one said, I've spoke to Casa del Ron. They said turn up between 4 and 5 and you get your tasting. So we think this is going to be a proper tasting. Yeah, when you've been to like a vineyard, or when we went to a vineyard last year, they took you through the whole process of tasting the wine and what you should be able to taste and smell and stuff like that, and explain what it is. We got to this bloody rum place, and they're like setting out all these tables, and it felt quite awkward, like we shouldn't be there. And we said, we're here for a wine tasting. And she says, oh, you can't come today. We've got a sitting now, party coming in. We can't do it today. You'll have to be tomorrow. Well, we were off to... We had a coffee tour, and we had a coffee tour in the morning, and the day was full. It was supposed to be a day of leisure, but we filled it up. And we said, no, we've got to do it today. It's part of, we paid for it. It's part of our package tour. And she says, all right, then sit down there. After a bit of jibber jabber with the boss. So we sat down, and she got out this bottle of rum. She poured it in a glass. She said, right, taste that. Swill it around your mouth. What can you taste? Oh, it tastes like rum. Yeah, very good, very good. She goes, now take another, now turn to the left and taste it. Can you get all those notes of chocolate and it tastes different, yeah? And we're like, what you want to? So because we've turned our head to the left, it was really bizarre. And then she wiped some orange around it and said, no, taste it. Oh yeah, that's much nicer. Can we go now, please? So it was really pathetic. We waited all day for this. It was a bit of a scam. I mean, the bottles looked nice and stuff, and it looked like there was a proper tour, because there was like a basement with loads of casks and stuff, and we're like, we want to go down there. We're walking around, and the ground's really dusty. It's kicking up dust everywhere, and I feel it in my throat. I can't quite shift it, because it's starting, you know, it's just not going. You kind of think there's something going on. It's starting to burn a little bit, and it's at that point we realise we've got a full-on cold. Now we've got the chocolate thing in the afternoon, which we do, and we've got days, and I'm sort of like, well, I've got to keep this on the lowdown, because the coronavirus, was like, oh, don't worry, it's just a cold or whatever, let's see how it is. But I'm like, the guys with the pump action shotguns dressed in black, are they going to distinguish between a head cold and coronavirus? I could get thrown in quarantine here if I'm not careful. We spend, I think, the next day travelling to Lake Atitlan, which is like a couple of hours drive away. You know, we could end up in quarantine. I don't know. It's not like we can go home either, because I can't go through we've got to go through an airport the next day or the day after. I said, I'm getting a bit, and she says, stop catastrophising, Sam. Just start trying to enjoy yourself. I'm like, oh, fucking hell. I'm ruining our honeymoon by having a cold, being miserable about it. So that I forced myself to go around on this thing. It wasn't a good idea. We got home. I just went to sleep for the rest of the day, and then I spent most of the next day just lying in bed. we're looking online and we're seeing lots of things going on. People shutting your country, shutting airports and getting upset, and we're starting to think, oh, this could derail, quite soon. So I sign up to these updates. The next morning, wake up. Around about this time, Trump closed the airports, and we got an email saying from American Airlines saying phone us to reschedule your flight because it's been cancelled, and we're like, what? So we're starting to think, okay, things seem to be going wrong here, but we're quite safe here. Guatemala haven't done anything. The next morning we get a text, an alert from the Foreign Office saying they've announced a national calamity or something like that, and measures are in place. He said what we might do is get you to Belize a little bit earlier, just so we can, if anything does go wrong, we can get your flight, because you've got a flight booked from Belize to Miami to the UK. So we get up the next day to travel to Flores to go see the Mayan ruins and the jungle and all the monkeys and all that crap, with a stop at a market, which is supposed to be a big deal. Sit down in a cafe. We get a phone call from our representative who says Belize have shut the border and then they're not letting people onto the planes to Flores. We've got to get you out, so we're going to get you back to Antigua, and then we'll get you to the airport tomorrow. We'll get you in front of an American Airlines person, and they've got a duty to get you home, basically. And there's a flight from Mexico. They may have to put you on that flight to Mexico, or they might have to reroute you somewhere else. So at that point, we're on lockdown. We're heading to Antigua, and then that night, the president announces. Compound that, the Americans have cancelled our Estes. So our temporary visa for going through has been cancelled. So we probably can't transit through America. And meanwhile, I mean, they don't know any. American Airlines haven't updated any of their systems to tell the operators that these flights are cancelled or anything like that. Yeah, it's just like... So as far as he's concerned, the flight's still going. But anyway, so we go back, we go to... we spend another night in Antigua, which we're pretty bored of by now, but we have a drink, we watch the smoking volcano. And then the next day we go to the airport, and we go in, and the airport is... The American Airlines aren't there. They've just bailed out of the country. They've abandoned us, essentially. Yeah, rather than have a bunch of stranded passengers queue at the desk say, you got to get us home, they just left. They just shut up shop and disappeared. The airport was heaving because the president had announced that he was closing the airport at midnight that night. But essentially, yeah, we were on a whole raft of not getting out from that point. So we go and register with the embassy, the British embassy. You think, okay, these guys will look after us, make sure we're all right. So we go up there and we actually see the English the ambassador to Guatemala. We didn't know it was him, but he saw us in the hall and started answering questions. His advice was, well, you could follow us on Facebook. But his attitude was, what are you worried about? There's another flight. There is an emergency flight out of the country is arranged to Costa Rica, which is still open for business. We get tickets on it. We get there and they won't let us in the airport because we're not Costa Rican. So they decided, the line had decided they're only taking Costa Ricans back to Costa Rica. So that screwed that. And we ended up getting on a chicken bus, which is like the Guatemalan equivalent of a mobile earthquake. It's like the American school buses with the suspension hardened and a Formula 1 driver at the wheel. We had a 6-hour trip to the Mexican border. And it was pretty horrific. And then we had the bureaucracy of getting over the border, across the bridge, and then taken to Tapachula, and then we were flown up to Mexico City, where we had to wait a couple of days for a flight. So, I mean, actually, in the scheme of things, it wasn't that bad. But when you're in it and you don't know, I mean, when he announced the airport closure, that border wasn't open to Mexico. They only opened it after a bit of or I presume the embassies got together and leaned on them, because we were trapped in a hotel with Polish people I think there was some French people about and German people about and stuff like that. So we were speculating beforehand, do you reckon they'll have air conditioning and maybe a toilet so we don't have to stop? And when these flipping buses turned up, I couldn't believe it. The roads are all, I mean, Antigua, right, it's one of these UNESCO sites, and that means it's got to keep these cobbled stones down in the town, and flipping it, man, it's like, but all the roads aren't, actually the roads aren't bad, but they're, in places they're a bit like a cheese grater, and when your driver's going over them at full pelt, and you're at the back, it felt like a getaway car. There was a convoy of 3 of us. At one point we had a police escort, which was kind of cool. Oh yeah, flipping, one lady left a bag at the service. We had one stop, yeah, and it was supposed to be for 10 minutes because we had to get there in good time, because if anyone couldn't get across, they had to get us back to Antigua. And we had one stop, it was supposed to be for 10 minutes, ended up being about 25 minutes before we got going. We got about half an hour down the road, and the woman says, I forgot my bag. It's got my passport in it. Oh, Jesus Christ. So we pull over, and then they get the car over. They take her back to the service station and come back. We've lost, God knows how long, about 45. And the guy comes on and says, look, if we stop, remember your bags. We haven't got time for this. We can't go back every time. We're like, yeah, obviously. She didn't even apologise. She got, everyone, we were sweating because the car wasn't, the bus wasn't moving. We could only get half the windows open anyway. Absolutely boiling us, and she just came on, sat down, and apologised to the person next to her. No one else. It's like, yeah. And we got back to London. So the hotel so we had our temperature checked. The Guatemalan side of the Mexican border, the Mexican side of the border, at the hotel. And then at the airport, when we flew from Tapachula to Mexico, and then went from Mexico to London Heathrow, we had a temperature check. So, about 6 times in total on the holiday we had a temperature check. We land at Heathrow, and it's just like, come on through. Absolutely no checking going on whatsoever. We're not interested. It is unbelievable. So the moral of the story, Guatemala are on curfew now, so we got out just in time. 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. But the moral of the story is Guatemala are going to get on top of this a hell of a lot quicker than we are. Yeah. All I could think about was getting home. Now I'm home, I'm thinking, why the hell did I come home? Why didn't I stay?